Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Think Tribe podcast. So we're talking a lot about learnings from 2020 and all the challenges it obviously brought to the digital world, and looking ahead to 2021. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of similar challenges and a whole set of new challenges as well. But to talk about that today, we're joined by Matt from Netacea, a partner of ours who specialise in bot management. Hi, Matt. Welcome. Do you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself and Netacea?
Sure thing. It's a pleasure to be here and speaking with you. My name's Matthew Grayson McMinn. I'm the head of threat research at Netacea. We do bot management solutions. Specifically, we help our customers deal with bot-based threats. Things like credential stuffing attacks, credential cracking attacks, carding, checkout abuse, monitoring, scraping, those sorts of attacks, automated attacks against web-facing architecture such as APIs or web stores in particular. We assist our customers with dealing with those sorts of threats. And my role specifically within that overarching model is to lead the threat research team. We go off, we investigate who these bot operators are, we figure out who they're targeting, what sort of products, what sort of services they're targeting, and what their techniques are. So we look at their sort of tactics, their techniques, their processes, and then we use that information to inform both our detection models, bot specialists who sort of provide sort of real-time assistance to our machine learning models in order to help provide better detection and mitigation of these sorts of attacks. And we also sort of disassemble some of these bot tools and so forth to figure out how they work and how their behavioral patterns look.
It's a really interesting space, and there's a lot of synergy between what you guys do and what we do in terms of capacity planning and performance and capacity testing. And one of the really interesting things we saw last year, there was a number of big high-profile product releases, PS5 and Xbox notably, that hit a lot of retailers in terms of high traffic volume. But along with obviously expected traffic, that also attracts a large amount of bots, which is something that I hadn't necessarily thought about before. And those malicious bots, I guess, target the merchandise and try and snap it up faster than humans can. And I read recently that over 50% of e-com traffic is now made up by bots, which is quite mind-boggling. For those who haven't maybe given it as much thought as similar to myself in the last few months, could you maybe give us an overview of what bot traffic is essentially, and the different types of bots, and how they manifest themselves?
Yeah, certainly. So bot is a fairly catch-all, quite a broad term. When we talk about bots, you've probably heard of things like chatbots. You've probably interacted with them if you've ever been on either an e-commerce or any other sort of support site. You often end up starting by talking to a chatbot and then finally getting through to a human afterwards. That's one type of bot. So a bot essentially is a computer program that performs an action automatically for someone, whether that's talking to customers or providing some sort of level of support. Or Google, for instance, use bots as well that trawl the website, web crawler bots. They go through the web looking for content and then provide Google with the information it needs to list things and index them. So those are sort of good bots that you don't really want to be stopping. Certainly Google, you don't want to be stopping. If you start blocking Google's web crawler bots, you probably disappear off Google's pages. And I imagine the marketing team will be quite angry at that. They usually don't take that one so well. There is, however, a dark side to bots. So like a lot of technology, there's a light side and a dark side to it. A bot is just a simple computer program that does something automatically. So it can do good things automatically, or it can do bad things. And the bad thing is really where Netacea tries to help our customers. So bots, even in bad ways, can do a lot of different things. You've got everything from, with the PlayStation 5s you mentioned, with the scalper bots. So those generally work by monitoring for when something becomes available. Or say a PlayStation 5, so they'll be constantly making lots and lots of requests to a website looking for the exact moment where that the PlayStation 5 becomes available, whether that's with a page for the PlayStation 5 going live, or whether that's say a stock notice from product unavailable to product available changing. They'll be monitoring it, and that can be fairly small scale on a website, as you might imagine. If it's only, say, once every 5 minutes, not much different to someone just hitting F5 or refreshing, say, a particularly keen customer looking for that. But it can get a lot worse. So some bot operators, and quite a lot of them in fact, are very keen to start to try and make sure they are the ones to get these products. And they will make thousands of requests every minute, if not every second. They'll push the bot as hard as they can to try and make as many requests. And that can, having, say, 10 people connect every second isn't so bad. Having 10,000 starts to increase infrastructure costs quite significantly. So you can see how even a small, low-scale bot could make, say, 500 to 1,000 times the footprint of, say, an ordinary user. You also have at that point then, once they've identified the product, you have another sort of stage in the bots, whether it's that bot or a different bot that comes piggybacking on the back of the first one, that will put the product in the cart and try and complete the purchase. However, there are other areas in which we also see bots. So click fraud with advertising, where bots will click on ads to sort of either get pay-per-click money coming through, or to just mess with marketing statistics, as sometimes happens, or just to try and burn through a competitor's marketing budget. That's another risk of those. And you see a variety of other bots. You've probably heard of botnets launching DDoS attacks and that sort of thing as well. There's a huge variety within how these manifest, and they can cause a lot of different types of damage.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and the implications of that are far-reaching. I'm just thinking of some of the things you touched on there, and linking it to some of the conversations we're having with clients a lot, linked with bots, is the impact on the customer experience, right? So thinking of the high demand items of PS5, there's one issue is the higher the normal traffic caused by bots has an impact on headroom and scalability, capacity, and then performance. Presumably, if they have queue management in place, that can be triggered earlier than it needs to be. That has an impact on the customer experience. And then there's the goods availability, because they've all been bought up by these bots. So there's a lot of ramifications there.
Brand reputation as well can be one. If all the goods are bought up by bots, your customers tend to get frustrated, and they might go to a competitor, and if they go to a competitor, they might stick with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's huge. And I think that's where there's a lot of synergy between, as I said before, what you guys do and what we do. We talk a lot about protecting the brand and protecting the revenue, two of the most critical things for any online business, obviously. Other things that we've been talking about that I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on are, a lot of the work we do with our clients is understanding what traffic profiles look like. Looking at their peaks, whether that's driven by these high demand items or influencers driving high traffic, or your traditional peaks like Black Friday or other sale periods. And we'll do a lot of analysis of things like their analytics packages to understand what those customers are doing at that time, what those peak profiles look like. But is that a challenge from a bot perspective as well? I mean, are bots now, are they being captured in analytics? Are they only seen in the web logs? And how are your clients mitigating against that?
So there's a lot. So bots themselves span the whole gamut. So you've got sort of basic bots, which are often quite easy to identify, all the way through to very advanced, much more professionalized. And we're seeing an increasing professionalism of the bot operator industry as profits go up. The PS5's really highlighted this, with some groups making more than £1 million worth of profit. We found a few groups who are making £1 to £1.5 million of profit with £1 million investment. These are really professional outfits. So we see people who are requiring free bots. You can get a free bot off GitHub to target PS5s or shoes or rare Pokemon cards, any sort of item like this. But you also get the much more expensive bots, up to about $27,500. I think it's one of the more expensive we saw recently. That's a very professional, that's a big investment. That's more of a sort of organizational tool than it is an individual hobbyist trying to get one PlayStation 5. That's a business level investment. Whereas the less capable ones tend to be a lot easier to spot. So a lot of the less capable ones, for instance, might one computer making, say, 10,000 requests a minute. That's fairly easy to spot, and you're probably going to assume that someone's not hammering their F5 key 10,000 times a minute. If so, you might want to call their doctor about the RSI they're about to start getting. I feel more sorry for the customer in that case in many ways. But you also have slightly more advanced bots. So some bot operators got a bit smart to this, and so they built a slightly more advanced one. So and we're seeing this sort of arms race of defenses and detection methods get better, and the bot operators move to the next step up and try to bypass those defenses. The defenses get better, and so on and so forth, and they get stronger and stronger. So to try and get around that one computer, we see a lot of proxying. Attackers started rotating IPs, so you'd get, say, 20 requests from one IP, and then a couple of minutes later you get some from another IP, and the IP changes very regularly, possibly even for each request. You can, again, spot the fairly low-hanging fruit from that fairly easily. If a company looks at these logs, does a bit of whois lookups on the IPs and goes, we probably don't have 5,000 customers sitting in a data center in the Netherlands looking at it. But as a general rule, most of our customers come from residential IPs rather than data center IPs. However, again, attackers are getting wise to this. So they move up into more of a residential proxies, in some cases using legitimate residential proxies, in other cases using somewhat more illegally acquired botnets. And some of these operators aren't even aware that they're possibly piggybacking off illegal botnets. These criminals are selling them to people who think they're acting legitimately, and the users of the computers are aware of this activity. But that's a sort of slight tangent away from there. But you get the idea of where this arms race is going with, you've got the low-hanging detections, and then it gets harder and harder as you're dealing with the more advanced groups. And in many ways, the more advanced groups, the more dangerous ones. They're likely to be the ones more likely to snap up all of your products, to find exploits or ways of interacting with your website or your API that weren't expected, and give them a slight edge as well. And that's really where sort of bot management solutions can help a lot. We use machine learning or a bit of secret sauce in there, and real-time examination of the data by human analysts as well, who are very skilled, very experienced. And what that allows us to do is the sort of machine learning clusters various different artifacts, very different aspects of it together, and identifies some of these attacks, despite the adversary's best ways of trying to hide them. And then real-time analysis of the data also helps. But as you say, there's always that hard part of what exactly do we know? One of the interesting things we saw was that as PS5s went up in terms of search on Google and so forth, the interest in scalper bots went up at the same rate. So you see that sort of pattern of more people want bots at the same time that big products come out. So understanding your sort of threats in terms of the bots coming towards you is also important, as more people are inclined to use bots when they have a need to get a product.
Yeah, and I find the scale of it and the professionalism that you talk about quite frightening. The amount of money that they're plowing into this is quite scary, and I think the businesses have to think about that, and also the cost to them. What are these bots costing the business? That we talked about brand, we talked about revenue, but also things like infrastructure provisioning. How you have to scale your infrastructure to accommodate for the traffic you're expecting, but if over half of that traffic is bots, you're paying infrastructure costs to host bots that are trying to buy products that you can't sell to your actual customers. I mean, it's as I said earlier, the implications are very wide-reaching, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And a lot of the work we do around the testing and scalability is around that. Sometimes clients want to know, actually, can I decommission some of my infrastructure? Am I over provisioned? But if just by cutting out 50% of your traffic from bots can do that, then that's a win-win for everyone.
And it usually goes over well with some of our customers when they're talking to their decision makers, the CFO, for instance, and saying, so we need to cut some of our infrastructure costs because 50% of it's going to robots rather than to actual humans. So it's a huge number.
Absolutely, and then there's the impact on performance as well, and the speed of the customer journey is something we're very focused on and talk about a lot. We've covered it a lot in our earlier podcasts. That you've got to think about that end-to-end customer journey, and a high number of bots making a high number of requests, as you've already touched on, much more than a normal user would. That can massively inflate your page delivery time or your any other your browser speed related times, and therefore your journey completion time, which again has a negative impact on the customer experience and the brand. That has to be a consideration as well, I guess.
Yeah, it really is. And if you've not done much to protect yourself against this, you can easily see your website go down, and then you're not just not selling PS5s because they've all been bought by the operators. You're not selling anything until you get your website back up.
Yeah, Yeah. So I guess the $1 million question, or maybe even more than that, is how do you manage bot traffic?
So I mentioned we use our sort of machine learning and human operators as well to try and analyze the traffic as it comes in real time. That's sort of a bit of a secret sauce I won't beat over the head, but I think probably the best place to start is to understand your threat. So if you know you've got a big, say, Black Friday sale, PS5, big popular launch, upcoming rare shoe sale. Some of the bot teams we've identified have been targeting everything from cars to heated toilet seats, Justin Bieber Crocs. Yeah, they are, and quite often they're trying to create artificial supply and demand, and that can be very hard to predict. But if you know something, gym equipment's recently been popular due to the lockdown. So if you've got lockdown items, hand sanitizer, toilet rolls, that's the sort of things that we're selling out or people are worried about. You know that you can guess that these items might be targeted. And then if you start seeing a lot of unusual traffic at an unexpected time, you can probably expect that a lot of it's going to be bots. Similarly, if you're doing a sale, bot operators love sales because they can buy very cheap and then resell later at a higher price, marked up not just from the sale price, but from the original price as well. So they get more profit. So if you're aware of these sort of threats ahead of time, you can take some steps to start saying, well, what do we need to protect them, and understand things that way. Alternatively, if you want to approach things from the other side, if you've seen a lot of unusual traffic, or you've had a sale and marketing has said, hey, through the amount of traffic coming through was much larger than expected, but that didn't correlate into as many sales as we thought, or the number of sales are somewhat suspicious. So you might say, for instance, see something we see a lot of, someone comes in and says, hey, we did a great job. We sold all of our stock of any console or something in 3 minutes. And you might think, well, our customer journey is usually 2 minutes, and we limited that to one product per customer. So that's a lot of sales very, very quickly if we're only expecting or allowing, say, 500 people on the website at any one time. Suddenly, the numbers just don't add up. So you can start saying, hey, obviously something was happening, some automated process, something was happening that was accelerating things beyond what we expected. We're probably being targeted. And then you can start reverse engineering that attack from there and use it to inform better decision-making in the future.
Plenty to think about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, the key thing is being aware, I guess, and then start your planning. Because I think a lot of people, it's new to quite a lot of people. Certainly the variety of the bots that you've covered, and what they're capable of doing, and the speed at which they're developing. It's important and very interesting stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
been
just.
really. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's also not just objects they target. Remember, services, marketing, and so forth is often hit by these sorts of bot attacks as well. It's definitely an area of increased interest by bot operators as well. We're seeing a lot of, particularly following the PlayStation 5, people are getting really interested in this as another source of income. So it's definitely I think it's something we're going to see growing in the near future.
Yeah. Well, it's been really interesting hearing all about it and talking to you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.